So he went to university because he wanted to get a good job and raise a family, do all that good stuff. And then it turns out after that, the economy was so bad and they had given so much bribery over to the top echelons of political power that he essentially was denied the ability to get a girl, to get a family, to start his life. So he worked in a fruit stand and he worked to put his whole family, like put food on the table for his whole family. And I guess this female, I don't know what they call them there, but here they call them like a bylaw officer. They're not really cops, but they just enforce city bylaws. So she attempted to extort him for money, and when he couldn't pay it because the fruit stand wasn't doing so well, she took his fruit away. And for him, that was kind of like the last straw, so he lit himself on fire. And that started the whole Arab Spring. So I always joke that that's like the incel that made the world stop. But Batman origin story. So it's something, I coined this term in 2017, which is actually hilarious. When I first decided to switch from anonymous to, being on camera and that. And I went to the 21 convention in Orlando in 2017. And it was great because everybody knew who Rolo was. Even as soon as he went live, everybody could figure out who he was. But I was still a nobody. So nobody knew who I was. So I could basically walk as if I was a guest. I think even when I went to actually go speak, they stopped me at the door and they're like, "Yeah, where's your pass, sir?" I'm like, "Well, I'm here for the speech." They go, yeah, guest or VIP? And I'm like, "No, speaker." They're like, "Oh, that's you? Oh, here." Handed me my stuff. It was pretty funny. But the first day, everybody sat in the lobby of the hotel. And they were I called it trading their Batman origin stories. If you guys don't know, every time there's a new Batman story, they got to show his parents getting shot. And so I thought it was funny. Everybody just sat around the table and they're drinking beer, talking about, "Oh, I was hard done by this bitch wife did that, this did that, this did that." And coming from where I came from, which was just like the same way Rolo came from So Suave as a moderator there, I came from a moderator as in the Married Red Pill. And it just seemed like we have an own your shit weekly thread where everybody kind of posts, "This is where I fucked up, this is what I can fix, and this is what I plan to do." And then other guys will be like, "Well, have you tried this and this?" And we all ping off each other. It's essentially swapping notes in the locker room, which is really the core of the Red Pill. So I heard all this stuff and I would just ask simple questions like, "Hey, how's your workouts and diet going?" Because this one guy was like 40 pounds overweight and not very attractive, dressed in like a graphic t-shirt and cargo shorts. And he goes, "I've already lost 60 so far." And he was like, that was his victory. And I'm like, "Yeah, but you're only halfway there." And so it was neat watching that first crowd, and a lot of the same guys came back in 2018 and you could see the difference. And ever since then, I had like a real distaste for people telling their origin stories. So I'll say this: I'm doing this one. I'm kind of holding my nose and doing it because, I mean, at the very least, you guys should kind of know where we all came from. So my Batman origin story, when I first started telling it a little bit there, just so people knew, I mentioned that it was the part of the MP investigation into my, where the officer basically asked, "Would you care to tell me anything you've done that's illegal?" And right there, I kind of realized that I was basically being zeroed out by an organization, but they didn't know why. It was just going through the motions. And then so that was really the kind of thing that started it here. I always like joking that I'm the only man in the manosphere who wasn't red-pilled by a woman. But I guess, so back to the topic, I guess your red pilling was more of a standard one. Like, I know we both came from the pickup world, so like PUAs, which I know is kind of ridiculous to call yourself a pickup artist. I know it's a bit of a fluff job there, but so then you had that, went to married, and then unmarried. Figured I already ranted about my Batman origin story for 15 minutes. I was going to give you a go.
Oh, I have kind of a standard thing. I went the pickup route back in the early 2000s. I kind of went the whole classic Neil Strauss route where you bang around for a while, you start wanting to have a relationship, you go down that route, you get married, you get divorced, you go back to I ended up back in the manosphere for some reason, and then I just kind of went from there. And that's kind of why. The funny thing about origin stories is, like, some guys are like, "Well, you've never made any mistakes or whatever." Well, the thing is, the reason why I know so much about this shit is that I was horrible with women early on. I was horrible with relationships. I didn't understand any of it. So I had to kind of learn everything. That's why I kind of know everything.
I hear there.
The worst guy you ask for advice on game or women or whatever is the guy who was just a natural. The guy's been slaying pussy since he was like 13.
I
Like,
do
you don't want
see
to
a bunch
ask
of those
that guy
guys.
for any advice whatsoever.
Yeah, the more I think about it, and there's a couple big names I can think of right now that we probably both know that are kind of in that realm, and I can kind of fault them for it too, because it's not even that they don't mean well, it's just that they don't know what they don't know.
Well, that's one thing. It's also kind of the thing, like, the typical advice you get is like, well, just be yourself. Okay, well, that works for you because your own personality is a magnet on chicks. It's like, if you've been, let's say, between 5'9" and 6'3", average weight, or ideally, a BMI of about 22 to 24, 25,
Right?
fairly naturally muscular and naturally athletic, etc., and you've been successful with women your whole life, I mean, you've never actually had to face an obstacle. That's like the guy who's been working in the public sector his whole life as a bureaucrat, or the guy who was born with $2 billion being like, well, making money isn't that hard, or this is how you should run a business. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
born into it, how much do you actually have to work to get good at something?
I always think of the tenured professor at a business school talking about entrepreneurship. That's always my go-to analogy, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
But that's the hard part too, because I don't know if you have that same insight I do, where I always consider like the three types of influence: the pathos, the ethos, the logos, and then
Yeah.
essentially status is more important, and then emotional resonance, and then the appearance of logic. But then that's the problem, because the naturals have the status, but the guys who had to build the status have to start from like the least persuasive place. So it's a weird, and I could see why the manosphere gets so much hate on that, because you're really starting to lead with like the least persuasive way to lead, even though it's more effective. I don't know if that makes sense the way I've been rambling about it, but
Well, I think you caught on a very important point, because if you look at it like this, I mean, the guys of whom we're talking, we all know who they are. And one thing you can say about them, they have ethos in spades and pathos in spades. But to go to Illimitable Man's argument, which I quite agree with to some extent, is that they're using ethos and pathos to sell what is, in essence, horrible fucking logos. Like, their content isn't all that good, but they have the charisma and the status to sell it.
new angles with advanced product placement. Here's the thing. Yeah, that's a really good angles. Groundshark coffee. They strive to make coffee that inspires you to be your best. Coffee that gives you a morning jolt or the afternoon energy to make your dreams a reality and tastes damn good while it's at it.
And that kind of becomes the major crux of that argument is, okay, you have the guys who are making the good content are not really that charming or that high status that they can easily sell it, especially to newbies who are going to see someone with high ethos and pathos and be drawn in. That's
Oh
why
yeah.
someone like a mystery, who had a lot of that natural charisma from his days working as a street magician, is going to be better at selling his content than someone who is more academic or more factual in his approach. Plus, certainty is always a good selling pitch.
Oh god, yeah.
So the guy who, like, my thing is, my caveats have caveats. And that comes from understanding something in nuance. But if you can just be like, do this and you'll swim in pussy, guys will be drawn to that naturally, because that confidence and that self-assuredness is a selling point in and of itself. So I think that's one of the major schisms, and it's kind of why I made that tweet the other day about, we're going to reach. I think I'm going to write a course on how to write a course on how to evaluate other people's courses, other people's course writing, or something like that. And it was just a joke, because you have all these guys producing more or less producing a ton of content, but they're not really, well, they're not producing content in that regard. They're producing more or less, their content is not their
They're feel good.
priority. Their goal is to sell it. So it's kind of like the guy who produces a shitty product and focuses on sales versus the guy who focuses really hard on product engineering. And then he ends up not selling anything. Because the more logos oriented you are and the more factual you are, the less persuasive you are. It's kind of like, take Rollo, for instance. I would say he has probably the strongest content in the manosphere, bar
Yeah,
none.
guaranteed.
But he's not really great with selling it. I mean, he sells a lot of books to his market, but let's just say he doesn't have the snappy sales pitches down in the
Yeah.
same way that some of the other guys do.
Well, even a lot of the guys in the Married Red Pill, once he started doing the Red Man group and being live more often, and it was probably one of the funniest comments I had ever seen. And I know you probably hate it if I even repeat this one, but it was, how is this guy so like normal and relatable when he writes like such a spurg? And I just laughed. I was like, holy jeez, fucking savage. But
Well,
I
I
was going
agree
to
with
say,
you.
yeah, here's the thing though that I was thinking from it, and I like treating it as a parallel to the sexual marketplace in general. So we all kind of know that the good man who will make a good husband is essentially losing in the sexual marketplace. I think you'd agree with that, right?
Yeah.
So let's take that same idea of, well, the sexual marketplace is what it is. The thought apocalypse is here. Tinder sluts are the way they are. So what are you going to do about it? So guys tend to be more CAD-like, be more aloof, be a little less easy to commit to, and it tends to work out better for them. So I take that same rationale for this. For the guys who create the most amazing content, but then you see the marketeer types are surviving from it. Well, what are you going to do about that? So essentially, to me, if you're making awesome content, you should be focusing on the part because it works. And it's, to me, it seems weird if you're going to talk about the red pill as in a praxiology, doing what works to achieve a certain end, or the end, like starting backwards from where you want to be, then it makes me wonder if people have internalized it fully enough, if they aren't becoming more, who's that salesman guy? Barnum? PK Barnum? If they're
P.T.
not being more
Barnum.
PK Barnum, but they're tapping into that whole I can just think my way through this problem or build it and they will come.
Well, it's kind of like my mode of writing when I write on the blog. I write 2,000 to 3,000 word essays.
Damn.
That's long form content for a very, very specific market. I don't do snappy writing on the blog. I do that on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the probably guys want, they want the Cliff Notes version of things. They don't want to have to read 200 pages or 2,000 words. They just want a guy to tell them, here's this pickup line. Go say this to a chick, and she'll fall to her knees and suck your dick. That's not how it works, but it's a very, very, let's say, appealing marketing pitch.
Oh yeah, because it's the whole thing about sales is that you want to solve a problem. So they don't want to learn how to solve it themselves. They just want it to be solved. And that's kind of been conditioned to guys ever since they started buying McDonald's instead of going out to make food.
So to me, that it just comes back to the whole thing that the marketers are just doing a great job selling other people's content in a more digestible form.
But that's the thing. So I like, you got to be able. There is no way that you should be able to create amazing thought, put down your experience, and not glean from that. Like you clearly can do it. I see your tweets; they're savage. You can tell you've done stand up. But like, if you can't take the lessons of what works, then I kind of wonder like how much credibility the content should get. Unless you want to be like a Tesla, who's like, they love that guy, but he died an incel. Oh my God.
Well, like in my case, it's just the fact that this is something like I'm not monetized at all right now since I pulled Gendernomics, and this is something I do in my spare time when the urge strikes me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm doing that, I want to do what I want to do. I don't want to do what someone else wants me to do. And the long form content is enjoyable, and the long form content kind of helps me clarify my own view.
That's why I started writing too. I love that part. It keeps you from just having this mental brain dump, and you can actually collect your thoughts and articulate them better.
Yeah, and you actually get to kind of streamline them and think them out logically. It's like if you've ever done a mathematics methods course or
Oh
any
yeah.
methods course. Yeah, you look like the type of guy who does high level mathematics. Well, the thing with it is you become a better writer by doing that math or doing those methods courses because they force you to kind of streamline your thinking into a certain model that you end up defaulting to remove the emotional effect in your thinking, because we all have some emotional effects, and that's why I get a lot more counter arguments on Twitter than I do on the blog, just because when I put something out on Twitter, it's 240 characters or less.
Yeah,
You
and it
cannot
kind of has to skip the
possibly,
nuance.
yeah, and you kind of have to make that snappy to get any response to it. If I do a Twitter thread of 100 tweets, no one's going to read that entire thread. So what I think it comes down to is, and I understand the perspective of wanting to protect the content and the body of knowledge from a bunch of guys who are selling courses at a price point and a value that makes a gender studies degree look brilliant.
I wish I got to start seeing more of these courses. Like I know for my affiliate stuff, I always make sure I try something before I even bother recommending it. So I think it kind of pre-filters a lot of the snake oil stuff. But I just wish I could see more of it, just to see what all the hullabaloo is about.
And for me, it's not about, like, I have no problems with guys who produce, like, I love the fact that Rollo is making money from his book. I love the fact that you're able to make money off your content, because I think that will keep guys who have other options around. If you invest heavily in creating your content, then at some point you're going to have to find some form of reward, whether that be an emotional reward because you're doing something, a reward because you're gaining status within the community, or a fiscal reward because
The king of the
you
nerds.
want.
I don't
Yeah,
mean to
probably.
laugh. Sorry.
No, that's cool, but everyone is going to need some form of reward for doing it. And I understand that some guys are saying, okay, if I'm going to put 20 hours, 30 hours a week into creating podcasts, into creating videos, into creating long form essays or whatever, then they need to be able to get some kind of check back from that just to justify the time investment.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's
And
what I'm
you're right though that the emotional fulfillment part adds to it, because if I just switch back to corporate and not do this, make so much more money. I'd probably be miserable too, so I'm willing to make that trade-off on not grinding my teeth in a car.
Yeah, I'm not. I make way too much in corporate.
Yeah, but where you are now, I think you actually have transit options. You can walk around to things.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So that helps. But like I said, my thing is just I get guys wanting to make content, needing to make money to justify their time. That's why I'm so hard with the time zone thing with doing Redman Group. And this show is just because if it starts cutting into my fucking time, that's a problem.
I just like now it's a morning show. I don't know why. That just kind of makes me laugh. We get a morning show down. We'll get the late night podcast. All we need is some kind of like filler. Yeah, I guess we got The View. Now we got like Good Morning Atlanta with Carl and Ryan. All we need now is some kind of red pill stand-up comedian. I'd use Owen, but that Owen Benjamin guy kind of just dropped 100 N-bombs and got banned, so whatever.
Yeah, but he's also kind of trad conny in my view.
Kind of? Oh, he's the epitome of like the Pat Stedman tradcon trope. Speaking of which, how's this for snappy? Tactical soap. Soap of the manosphere. Keeps your hands clean. Makes it so you don't smell like a woman. Go get it.